Welcome to Performance Anxiety. Thank you guys again for tuning in. Elizabeth McCullough records as Alpha Cat, but this show is about more than just her music. Elizabeth began her career in music as a photographer. She transitioned to a recording artist in the late 90s, but after a series of personal and professional setbacks, she suffered a breakdown while recording Alpha Cat's second LP. The breakdown was so severe that she researched and contemplated suicide for over a year while going to therapy. It was only after her therapist passed away that Elizabeth realized how much she had helped her. With that in mind, Alpha Cat is offering a recording of a live show for $2 from alphacat.band. The proceeds are being donated to Bring Change to Mind and Boris Lawrence Henson Foundation. Follow Alpha Cat and us on Instagram. Pick up Alpha Cat's latest album on Bandcamp for a reduced price. And now let's get right into the show with Elizabeth McCullough of Alpha Cat.
Okay. This is Elizabeth from Alpha Cat. I'm a singer-songwriter. I am a producer. I am a fairly decent acoustic guitar player. My strength in guitar is that I don't know how to read music, so I have to do everything by ear, which is why I come up with weird shit that people like Doug Pettibone were like, how did you come up with that? I'm like, well, I don't read music, so and any other instrument that I've ever played on any of my tracks is something that I picked out by ear and practiced 1,000 times to get it to the point where I could record it and then immediately forgot. So there you are. I don't know where to start. I guess you should start.
Yeah. I'll get it going.
It's my cat's birthday today.
Oh, happy birthday to the cat.
I've had, she's 5, and I've had her 3 years, and that was 2 years after she'd been on the streets of New York City.
Oh, wow. Man, that's a tough cat.
So my cat Pedro, who is I don't tell Fiona, but he's my favorite. He's like 15, and
wow.
He was on the streets for a year.
Oh, wow.
And when I met him at Bideawee over on the east side.
Okay.
Like, well, all we have is this, like, 1-year-old cat, and most people don't want a cat that old. They want a kitten.
Yeah.
And he had been hit by a car. His jaw was wired shut.
Oh, my gosh.
Had, like, feline distemper.
Wow.
And they're like, take him, they're like, you know, do you want to take him out? And they take you into this room so you can, meet.
Yeah.
And I picked him up, and he immediately headbutted me.
Oh, my gosh.
I was madly in love, and then I couldn't get him for like weeks because I couldn't get him until they had taken the wires out of his jaw and he recovered from distemper or whatever he had. So I would actually go to Bideawee and visit him.
Oh.
That's how in love with him I was, and even more today.
Oh, that's awesome.
I talk about my cats
now. Well, my dog, he's a rescue. We don't know his actual birthday, but we guesstimate it's actually around July 4th. So we kind of just celebrate Independence Day and our dog's birthday in the same thing. And he'll be 5 this year. So he's he's a boxer Australian Shepherd mix.
Wow.
So he
sounds interesting.
Oh, he's awesome. He's so cool. He looks like a little miniature Rottweiler. He's a tricolor. So they had all their 5 puppies in his life. And I'm trying to remember which. I think the boxer may have been the father, and he got loose and bred with the mother. So the litter of pups was all they're all white and brown except for our dog, and he's the only tricolor, and he was the only male, I believe. And
wow.
But the owners got him all his shots. They ended up neutering him way too early and docked his tail. So they put all that effort into him and then gave him up. They're like, we don't want him anymore. So they picked the rescue shelter picked him up, and
they didn't tell him his actual birthday.
No, I don't think so. Or the lady, I'm not exactly sure, because she gave us one approximate date, but the vet said no, he's actually a couple weeks older. So
as a puppy.
Yeah. So it was just
easier to tell then.
Yeah. So we got him. We thought he was like 12 weeks, but he was actually ended up being like 17 or something like that. So I don't know, but he's a great boy. I love him to death. He's a sweetheart, and he's really good with the kids. So I want to thank you for coming on the show.
Sure, yeah. I enjoyed the ones I listened to. The first one, I forget his name already.
Oh, John Aniello?
Yeah. To hear him explain all of the differences between, an engineer and mixing and mastering. I mean, I know that stuff, but yeah, it's kind of like I've kind of done all of it. No, I have mastered, not well, but I used to basically have a Pro Tools studio.
Oh, cool.
Which was not. I started when it was free, and then I did end up buying it when it was like $75. And I think when I went to LA to make Venus Smile, I think I was on 7.
Oh, wow.
And so that's where, and then I took a Pro Tools class kind of in the middle of my depression, and I got, I guess it was 9 or 10, and I never even touched it. So at this point, it's like that's something someone else can do now. If I write a song, the next song I write, it's going to be in GarageBand.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And, I found the same thing with Photoshop. I had up to like Photoshop 6 or something, and then they changed it to Creative Suites or something like that. And then it went to a subscription base. And at that point, I'm like, I can't do this. I'm not a professional anymore. I'm not going to do a subscription for something I'm using as a hobby now.
Well, see, I find I had to get the subscription because I had to do all the artwork for my record.
Oh, yeah.
So I find it nicer because it's only like $20 a month, and if you don't update it every month, if you don't automatically update it, you're not paying for it. So when I need it, I can update it, and if I don't need it, I don't have to.
Yeah,
and I know enough about it that I know how to do the rudimentary things that I need to do.
Yeah. For me, it was a budgetary thing. At that point we were in Alabama, and I was selling insurance, and $20 I had 3 toddlers. I couldn't justify it at that point. $20 was it could go somewhere else. But
for me, $20 is a lot cheaper than paying someone else to do it hundreds of dollars.
Exactly.
Maybe thousands.
Exactly.
And I know, I when I was in graduate school, Photoshop came out when I was getting my master's in photography.
Okay.
We got it first.
Ah, yeah. So
we were there, and somebody was talking about fake news the other day, and I was like, listen, I did a whole paper on this. When Photoshop came out, there was this huge uproar because National Geographic had turned I think it was a picture of the camels in front of the pyramids. They had turned it from a horizontal into a vertical, and there was an uproar that, it was like fake. And whole paper about how the news was never real. It was always subjective. It was always manipulated, from the beginning of history. So it's not like fake news is a new thing. It's a new term.
Yeah.
Not a new thing.
No, because it's everything. You're seeing news, all of that through the eyes of the person who took that picture. So it's automatically edited. Which came first for you, music or photography? How did you get started in both of those, and which one was first?
Well, it's interesting because music was always first as far as my love. Because when I was a little tiny girl, I remember when I was old enough to have to do the washing the dishes after dinner.
Yes.
I would listen to the top 40 radio, or the top 10.
Okay.
There was one song in particular, I'm not going to date myself, that was number one for like weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. And every week when it was number one again, I would just jump up and down and cheer. Like I was so happy. And when I was like 12, I had this horse. It was kind of like this old nag that had been, she was handed down to me from my sister.
Okay.
And I would ride my bicycle to the pasture. And I remember when I was 12, I was riding my bike home one night, and I was singing at the top of my lungs Carole King's "It's Too Late, Baby, Now It's Too Late," and sobbing.
Oh, wow.
Like I had no idea what that meant, except for maybe a past life, but certainly at 12, I didn't know. I had no experience with that, with that, whatever that was talking about.
Yeah, with the emotions of the song.
Right, yeah. So I always loved music, but I did also love photography, and when I was in college, I went to a small college, which you mentioned Lookout Mountain in Tennessee.
Yeah,
when
Chattanooga.
I actually skydived there twice.
Oh, wow.
That's what inspired the song Ground Rush.
Oh, wow, okay.
Jump out thinking that we can fly. Get a little closer if you dare. Don't look now, you are falling down, 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 down. Don't look down, we are falling down, 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 down.
Oh, that's awesome.
But the school that I went to was very small, and the art department was small, and so I couldn't get into a photography class until I was a senior.
Oh, wow.
So I did everything else. I did printmaking, I did painting, I did sculpture, I did etching, everything.
Right.
And I was good at all of it, but I just I didn't really have anything to say. I have one painting left. That's not true. I have 3 paintings left. I have a landscape, I have an abstract, and I have a larger-than-life painting of Mick Jagger, because mostly what I painted was rock stars.
Oh, cool. Okay.
So, and then when I started doing photography, I did 2 kinds. I did like the Cartier-Bresson style of street photography.
Oh, yeah.
And then I did...
decisive moment.
Yes, and then I did portraits.
Okay.
So that's how I started photographing bands. And I was photographing bands because I wanted to be around music, and I didn't feel like I had any particular, right or, talent. I didn't feel like I was up to, being a musician. I could date them, I could photograph them, but, I even though I did start writing songs pretty much right out of college, but it was fairly secret.
Oh, so you're just doing that for yourself?
I mean, I had a roommate who was a guitar player, and he would play with me, and I don't even have any of those songs anymore. I don't know what happened to them.
Oh, wow.
We did one gig at a wedding down on the Jersey Shore.
Oh, man.
And I was so nervous. I drank all this gin, and I got up there, and the drummer didn't even know the song.
Oh.
I don't think the rest of the band knew the songs. And we did one song, and I heard someone say that was the worst shit I've ever heard in my life.
Oh my God.
And then we were saved because the next thing that happened, it was right on the beach, is some drunk guy drove off the road onto the beach, and so all these cop cars came with sirens and lights, and so we were out of there.
Wow, that's crazy.
And it was many, many years before I had the courage to get up on a stage in front of people again.
So for then, are you doing photography professionally at this point? And what was your first? Paying gig. I started doing it professionally pretty much out of college. I was shooting for Boston Rock, and I had a whole section in the Boston Phoenix of my other photography, because one of my teachers was he worked for the Globe and he worked for the Phoenix, and he loved my work, and he got me this. I mean, my work was good, but he got me a 5-page pullout of my work, and it was called Pictures of an Intuition, because even at that point I had realized that these moments that I was capturing were symbolic, and that it wasn't something that I could have consciously done, because if something's happening in front of you, if you think about it, it's over. Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, if you're taking that much time, it's gone.
I mean, I have this one photo that I took when this is just an example. I was on the beach. I guess I was up on the shore above Boston, and on the boardwalk or the sidewalk, and there was just this little girl, and I took a picture of her, and then I print the picture, and the girl has a trail of trash behind her.
Oh, wow.
And nothing in front of her.
Oh.
It was just it just happened, and I tend to be psychic, but I mean, it certainly wasn't a conscious thing that I was like, oh, this girl is trailing trash.
Yeah. Well, in my experience with it, when you're shooting as much as you do as a professional photographer, you kind of get that feeling, that intuition of when to shoot. And I don't know about you, but I would just shoot a lot and and then it came down to editing. So my God, I had this terrible fear that I was going to miss the moment. Yep.
So I had to have my camera with me every second, and I had to shoot constantly.
Yeah.
And finally, and then I got an automatic camera, because I was like, if I get an automatic camera, then maybe I'll get something that I wouldn't get otherwise. And then it became an insanity, and I was like, hold on a minute. You can't be there for everything.
Yeah.
You can't witness everything, and you have to just chill out,
Yeah.
relax about it.
Yeah,
and then
I know what you mean.
it was like a whole mind switch at that point.
See, for me, what happened was when I went to college for photography, I could all the assignments we had to do. They would give you you have to shoot 10 rolls of film, and I want to see your contact sheets, and then we'll pick 4 shots. And my problem was that tuition was so expensive. I couldn't afford to shoot 10 rolls of film for for a project that was 2 weeks long, and then have to shoot another 10 rolls for the next project, and you do multiple projects in a semester. And I just had to, I ended up having to economize, and instead of shooting 10 rolls, I'd shoot like 4. Because I just couldn't afford 10 rolls of film and all the paper and everything. Right. It was just crazy to me. And that kind of, I got really discouraged actually going to college for photography, because in my 17, 18-year-old brain, it was going to be this magical place where I was going to learn all these techniques, and it was going to be this big open place where everybody was going to teach me all their secrets, and it ended up being as kind of the opposite. My first teacher was amazing. He was awesome, but if I went to a student and had liked something that they had shot, how did you do that? I can't tell you. Well, why not? Because I need to get a good grade. I don't want you to do what I'm doing and then maybe get a better grade than I am.
Like you can copy what they do. Exactly.
But again, that the teenage brain isn't thinking that, apparently, but that it was intensely competitive, and I wasn't prepared for it. And so it just, I don't know. I actually ended up leaving school in my junior year and then just going out and shooting anyway. So, but
I had this really. When I got out of college, and I'd only had 1 year of photography, and I was quite passionate about photography. So I went to this school. Sorry, that's my Instagram alert.
No problem.
I went to this school in Boston called the Art Institute of Boston,
yes,
which was really not. It was not accredited. There was no. I was not going to get a degree of any. With any meaning, and they were okay, but the only teacher there that I liked was the guy, I forget his last name. His first name was Jerry, the one who got me into the Phoenix.
Okay.
But after I got into the Phoenix, because the people at the darkroom hated me for some reason, because I was so passionate about it. I would be rushing in and out of the darkroom to look at my prints, and occasionally I'd bump someone or whatever like that. I was just too passionate for them. They didn't like that.
Oh,
and
gosh.
Then after I got that piece published, I was like, watch. They're not going to let me use the darkroom anymore. And sure enough, I went in, and they're like, you can't use the darkroom anymore. You're exploiting our darkroom.
Oh, gosh. Jeez.
Yeah.
That's the mindset that I don't like about those types of institutions. I had some great experiences. I went to Rochester Institute of Technology, and I had some great experiences there, but I also had some of the worst experiences in my photographic life at that place.
I can say the same about my graduate school.
Yeah.
I've had some great people. I had some really good teachers, but at the same time, the head of the department was a total asshole, completely disrespectful, and I was older than most of the other students because I had gone and worked as secretary for a while at Columbia University residence halls.
Oh, okay.
a bad experience. I won't go into because I can't go into everything.
Right.
But like this teacher would do stuff like one day I was supposed to meet him at his studio, and it's pouring rain, and I have like a terrible flu or cold, and I'm waiting outside his studio, and he never fucking shows up.
Oh, jeez.
So then the next time I saw him, I was like, Charles, you know, that was terrible what you did.
Yeah.
You know, and he would just like put me down. And you know, it ended up being where at the end of when I had my thesis exhibit, which was in Soho, I like printed 24 hours a day for probably 6 weeks, 16 by 20, 20 by 24 color prints.
Wow, nice.
And they were all, it was completely, you know, it was completely, what's the word? Conceptual.
Okay.
But it was like filmics. So there were assemblages of multiple prints that were meant to look like life, and like life is metaphor. And at the end, you know, he was so mean to me, and again, I won't go into the details, but I ended up writing a letter to the, because he basically, I did something that was made complete sense and would have saved them money, and he screamed at me, and so and threatened that I wouldn't be able to have a show, and so I wrote a letter to the president of the school, who happened to be his fishing buddy.
Oh.
So of course they dismissed me as a crazy female, like they had with when I dealt with what I dealt with at Columbia. And I was at my friend's show. I'd already had my show. He did let me have the show in the end, and of course tried to take credit for it, even though he had done everything in his power to stop me. And I was at another friend's, you know, thesis show, and I was like about ready to separate from my husband, but I didn't know it yet, and I had dyed my hair, you know, like bleached blonde like Madonna, and I went to this opening, and the guy that worked for this head of the department was a friend of mine, and he said, I just want to tell you, you know, Charles is going around telling people that you should be institutionalized.
Oh my gosh.
And so I go out on the sidewalk, and I'm like just hanging out with my friend, and he comes up to me and he's like, Elizabeth, you shouldn't have written that letter. And I was like, well, I disagree. And he just kept saying it, and he just got louder and louder and louder until he was screaming at me on like Worcester Street in Soho.
Wow.
And I just very calmly, I just said, Charles, I disagree. And, you know, it's not like I didn't have resentments against him, but I felt like that night I won.
Yeah. You know, it sounds like you did. So you got all this going on, and you're shooting for magazines, and you're actually shooting musicians now. Is it you doing a lot of live shots, or is it studio work, or kind of a mix of both?
I hardly ever did live shots. What I did was I would arrange with the bands to either meet them backstage, or I would take them outside, and I would set up. Before, when I was in Boston, I just used a flash and a Pentax 35 millimeter. But then I got a Hasselblad.
Ooh.
When I was in Atlanta, I had this setup where I had a tripod for the Hasselblad and a tripod for the flash.
Yeah.
So I was doing like studio portraits with these bands.
Oh, nice.
And, you know, like, and I was getting published, you know, 3 or 4 things a week in Creative Loafing, which was kind of Atlanta's answer to the Village Voice.
Okay.
And, like, one night I was out at a club, and some guy comes up to me, and he's like, "Are you Elizabeth McCullough?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he was like, "You're not so great."
What?
Like, Jesus Christ.
What?
Like, I mean, I could only deduce that he was a photographer.
Yeah.
I was jealous, you know.
Oh my gosh.
But so, like, you know, the weird transition was that, you know, I kind of always kind of undersold myself as a photographer. I mean, I did end up shooting for Musician magazine and Cream magazine, and I did continue to do that when I was in New York, but I didn't get a lot of work. I certainly had to work other jobs, but I was kind of like going to these smaller places, and I had a really bad experience with a photo of Dwight Yoakam that the Village Voice published.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I photographed him in Atlanta.
Okay.
And he did not like to be photographed from the front because he has a round face.
Right.
But I did anyway, and I got this really cool shot of him with like his arm on his hat, his hand on his hat, and he's kind of making a face, but it was really cool.
Okay.
And then, so the voice editor loved it. He's like, "Oh, can I use this?" So I'm like, "Sure." And he printed it. It was like buried in the paper. It was an inch square, but he cropped it. So all you could see was the face.
Oh.
There was no context. So the next thing you know, I've got a letter from Warner Brothers threatening me
What?
that I can never shoot anyone on their label ever again.
Oh my gosh.
Over a 1-inch square photo.
That you didn't even do the cropping on.
No, I didn't crop it, and the voice editor didn't have my back in any way, shape, or form. Like I was
I'm
on
not
my
surprised.
own. So it was just very discouraging. You know, it was one of the many discouraging things that happened to me when I was a photographer.
Yeah.
And so the transition happened. Like I decided to do this last ditch promo effort.
Okay.
And I made this calendar. I at that point I was scanning negatives and printing them digitally.
Okay.
And I printed out this digital calendar. You know, I bound it at Kinko's, and I called it beautiful people who are beautiful. No, people who are not famous, but beautiful anyway.
Okay.
And combination of, some of them were actually famous, but most of them weren't.
Okay.
Combination of black and white and color. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to take this to some really major magazines and just see what happens. So I went to Vanity Fair, I went to George Magazine, where I didn't get on the same elevator as JFK Jr. Unfortunately, if I had, maybe he'd be alive today. I don't know. But he said hello to me because I was waiting at the elevator, and he came up next to me, and I saw him from the back, and I just knew instantly who he was.
Oh, yeah.
He turned around and he said, "Hey," and I was like, "Hey," and then he got in the elevator, and I purposely waited for another elevator because I didn't want him to think I was stalking him.
Oh, yeah. That makes sense.
Anyway, so I take this calendar to all these magazines, you know, Interview, Vanity Fair, etc., and they get back to me and they're like, "Oh my God, this is so amazing," you know. And I remember particularly Vanity Fair was like, "Your color work is gorgeous," you know.
Oh, wow.
But they didn't offer me jobs. And at the same time, I'd been sending out these cassette demos of my songs to clubs.
Okay.
And the clubs were calling me up and saying, "Did you write these songs?" And I was like, "Yeah." And they're like, "Can we give you a gig?" And
Oh, wow.
I was like, sure. So then it was kind of a no-brainer because, I worked so hard for so long with the photography and I was good, but, I was not, the universe did not support my doing that.
I understand that.
And then when I switched to music, and then when I put my first record together and I had all these skills, graphic design and photography, I was able to put all of everything that I'd learned in my life into the creation of this package. My photograph design, my, everything. So it was like everything that I'd ever learned, it's suddenly, and everything that I ever loved, which was above all, music for my whole life.
Yeah.
It sort of all came into play, and it was like, okay, now this is the way I can express myself most fully.
So, how did you come up with or choose the name Alpha Cat?
I had this really cool photo of a meerkat, and I was like kind of obsessed with them. And so I did a few gigs with some, my guitar teacher basically said he'd be in a band with me, and then I knew another guy from Boston that I'd met when he was in a band, and he said he'd play bass, and we found a drummer, and we performed a few times under the name Meerkat. And so when I was designing Real Boy, I kind of wanted to use the meerkat. But I had this photo of a boy that I had taken that I was black and white, and I had, colored in Photoshop just the boy, so that it was like he's in a black and white background, but he's in color. And I was putting Meerkat as the name of the band, and it just didn't look right. So my sister had been talking about, she was a big dog person, about alpha dogs, and Alpha Cat kind of popped into my head.
Oh, wow.
And I tried it out, and I came up with kind of this logo, and I just really liked it. I liked the way it looked, and then, the record came out, it did really well on college radio, and I got a band together with ads in the Village Voice, and a drummer who I had met in my astrology class.
Oh,
so
cool.
If you have the drummer, you can get the band, right?
Right, yeah.
So I had the drummer. He wasn't very good. He ended up being a con man, but that's another whole story. And it turned out that it ended up being 3 women and 2 men.
Okay.
So it was like, okay, this makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Alpha Cat is like female, and my bass player Lori came up with this phrase one day, Alpha Cat, less cock, more rock. And so I actually made these t-shirts, and I couldn't obviously put the word cock on them, so it said Alpha Cat, less, and I have a picture of a rooster.
Awesome.
More rock. And people would come up to get the t-shirts, and they're like, what is that? Less chicken, more rock? And I was like, no.
Oh, less chicken. That makes a lot of sense.
So that's how the name came about.
Okay. All right.
And then, as the bands, we had to, when we were making Pearl Harbor, we had to fire the drummer because he really wasn't up to snuff. And it was Fred's idea to fire him, and I was not opposed. And so we got to work with some other really good drummers. And then my bass player quit before the record release party.
Oh, geez.
And so Fred ended up stepping in on bass for our record release party, which was amazing. Even though she was an amazing bass player, no doubt. But
But Fred, I mean,
So,
Fred Smith coming in, that's a pretty good sub.
Yeah. So what happened is that, I had to keep getting new band members, but I just kept the same name.
Okay.
And I would find these people, and it was basically men. Angela, who was the original guitar player in Alpha Cat, she stuck along for a while, but then I found some guys that really wanted to be a band, and we wanted to go in on a rehearsal space in Hoboken, and Angela lived in the city, and she's like, I'm not going to do that. She's like, I'm not going to pay, and I'm not going to go to Jersey.
Oh, wow.
So I had to get another guitar player. And so the succession of, people that kind of went through Alpha Cat, like, it just, I just kept the name because, it turned out I was a constant.
Okay, that makes sense. So the first album, the first EP, Real Boy, came out in '99.
Yeah, September of '99.
Okay, and had a great reception, and the follow-up, Pearl Harbor, had some pretty bad luck as far as the release being right around the time of 9/11, which,
well, yeah.
And I had it's funny, you're not the first guest to have suffered that. I had Ken Stringfellow on, and his album Touched actually was released on September 11th. So,
well, my this is where being psychic and tuned into the universe is not helpful, because it was called Pearl Harbor. There was a bomb on the cover, and we had the sound effects of a glass building falling down at the end of Thatched Roof Glass House, which was a completely different version than what's on the new record.
Yeah.
Because what I tended to do was write songs when we were almost done with the record and want to put them on. So then they would, then gigging them out, they turn into something else or whatever. But I don't think anybody even got to the glass sound effects and I had for some reason decided to work with some promoter in LA who was just a total crook.
Oh.
And like all they did, they took me out to lunch in LA and bought me lunch, and I was really impressed with that. And what they did was they sent me lists of people to send the record to, and I had to put together these binders that were incredibly expensive to put together and to mail.
Okay.
And so I had this list of contacts. Half of them no longer even existed.
Oh,
they were told to me as these are current. We're on top of this.
Oh, God.
Half of them didn't even exist. And they had me playing like at fucking Barnes and Nobles out in Jersey.
Oh, jeez.
By myself, or out in Long Island, and I have my little portable PA and mic, and I'm driving to these places by myself. And I'm playing to maybe 3 adults, and children are wandering around, and it was such a waste. So it was just like someone else asked me that question about, comparing it to Ryan Adams coming out with the New York song.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, that's just the way the cookie crumbled. It wasn't meant to be.
Yeah.
And even though thematically, like that, it was a concept album, and the concept was, how do you get from a place of destruction back to, which for Pearl Harbor, specifically for me, was I was thinking about, it must have been called Pearl Harbor before it was bombed.
Yeah.
And it must have been because there were pearls in the harbor.
Yeah, exactly.
So how do you get back to a place where it's about treasure and not about destruction?
Oh, that's interesting. That's really cool. I like that idea.
So the whole scene, if people had heard the record at that time, I think it would have been helpful. But I think now, because of what's going on now, it's not so charged. So, it's been remastered and I'm going to re-release it.
Oh, wonderful.
But that looks like it's probably not going to happen until next year now.
Yeah, unfortunately, a lot of things have been pushed back. You started a whole new batch of songs in around 2007?
Yeah, I mean, some of them were ones that I'd had around. I mean, they were written.
Okay.
I moved to LA. I had a really, really fucked up kind of relationship.
Okay.
With a guy who was on tour as a drummer. I forget who he was on tour with. But, we would talk on the phone like 5 hours a night. And, he was supposed to, I think it was New Year's Day, and I was still living upstate at that point.
Okay.
And I'm like, okay, something's wrong. You're acting weird. And he's like, well, I slept with someone in Austin.
Oh, jeez.
And then I met Fred's, and we had already planned, and I had already bought him a ticket because, of course, he was poor. He literally lived in a storage space in L.A.
Oh, wow.
He lived in a storage space.
Oh.
Like the drummer joke, what's a drummer without a girlfriend? Homeless. Well, unless you have a storage space, right?
Oh my gosh.
Anyway, so he was going to come for Thanksgiving or the day after, and I'm like, well, I'll buy your ticket if you'll record some drum tracks for me.
Okay.
And then I was like, okay, so here's the deal. We aren't really boyfriend and girlfriend because we're not in the same place. We've only seen each other in person for a total of maybe 8 days.
Right.
So, maybe if you still want to come, it's up to you. Okay. If you still want to pursue this. And then I met Fred and his wife's, Paula's, for Thanksgiving dinner, and I get this phone call. And it's him, and he's like, did you read my email? And I said no, and he said, go read your email right now. So I'm in the middle of Thanksgiving dinner. I was planning on driving down from upstate, staying at my friend Chris Butler's apartment, and then picking him up at 6 a.m. at Newark Airport.
Right.
So, it's like 9 p.m. I read this email. He's like, this girl means more to me than I thought, I really don't know if I should come. And,
wow.
And I was like, okay, I guess the same thing applies. Like, what are your feelings for me? And, do you want to try to make something of this? Because if you don't, don't come. But if you do, because he was literally on the way to the airport.
Oh, jeez.
So he decided to come. And I drove down and, I maybe slept an hour at Butler's apartment and drove to Newark and picked him up and drove back upstate and then the nightmare began. Because what would happen was, he would be like, I can't sleep with you, I'm in love with this other woman. And then the next thing, he'd be like, well, let's go to bed. And then, and then he'd be like, no, I can't, and it was like a month. So what I ended up doing was basically sitting in my basement, smoking cigarettes, drinking champagne, and crying. And he would come down to the basement This went on for 4 days. He would come down to the basement and he would say, "You don't realize how much I love you." And I would be like, through sobs, I was like, "You're not acting like you do," you know?
Yeah.
And then after 4 days, I was finally like, "Okay, that's it. You've got to go." And I dropped him at the bus station in Kingston. I was like, you know, have a nice life.
Wow.
And then, right after that, I was also a huge Beck fan, and was a big influence on a lot of my writing, later writing. And I went online and saw that he was playing Jimmy Kimmel, and so I got tickets, and I got a ticket to LA, and I went out there, and I met this friend of mine that I had met, who was actually a film music supervisor, who was like the only music supervisor that had his email up, and we actually became good friends. But and I stayed with him and his partner. But we went to the show. Beck had canceled. It was I don't remember who it was, but we didn't go in. And then I just decided, because I had been working, I had been doing gigs periodically in LA with this drummer Jason Smith.
Okay.
And we just really hit it off. He loved my music. He was a great drummer. You know, he could also play other instruments. And so I'm like, God damn it, I'm going to LA and I'm going to make a record with Jason.
Okay.
So I basically, I packed up my guitars. I packed up my Pro Tools studio in a U-Haul. It was winter time. I'm doing it by myself. I'm slipping and sliding on the ice, packing this shit up. And I drive to Tennessee to be with my family for Christmas. And then my friend Susan met me there, and she drove the rest of the way to LA with me.
Oh, wow.
And we got there on New Year's Eve. And this is like a 6-day drive with 2 cats in the car.
Oh,
okay?
jeez.
And they're loose because you can't drive all day with cats in cages. They have to be able to use a litter box.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, they were good. They weren't a problem at all. But
I was waiting for a cat story to come up.
no, I mean, my cat Billy, who was actually featured on the record Pearl Harbor, both in photo and his voice is in the intro. His meow is in the intro to Sometimes When I Wake.
Oh, cool.
I used to drive with him, and he would get in my lap, and he would look out the window, but he never interfered with my driving.
Oh, that's good.
So yeah.
Oh man. All right, so you drive in. You decide to go to LA, and so what happens once you get to LA?
Like, how long do you have?
So
I had rented this studio apartment in the Hollywood Hills.
Okay.
And I got there, and there was someone living there. And I'm like, okay, what's going on? Like, I'm supposed to be moving in today. And he's like, oh, you know, I'm moving out tomorrow or the next day. So we got a hotel, and, you know, luckily he moved out, and I moved in. But then it turned out that like a month later, some people knocked on the door, and they're like, we're supposed to move in.
What?
And I'm like, I'm living here, and they're like, well, we signed a lease and paid, you know, the guy who was I don't remember his name, who owned the house, or he had the lease for the house.
Oh my.
We paid him this deposit, and, you know, basically this guy was renting out this apartment to multiple people, taking their money
and
God, not following through.
Wow.
So I ended up becoming friends with this poor couple, but they were fucked. They had to find another place.
Oh, wow.
So that I was so lucky that the guy that I was there when I got there actually was moving out.
Apparently so, yeah. Gee.
So, and then unfortunately, I kept in contact with this guy, the drummer, who was in LA.
Okay.
And if I'm honest, there was something in the back of my mind about him being there. I mean, I definitely wanted to make a record with Jason. I definitely wanted to make a record, but there was something in the back of my mind, and that was sort of an ongoing mind fuck too, because it was like, he would call me, or I would, he'd email me, and then I'd email him back, and I'd say, you're the worst thing that ever happened to me in my life. I've never, please just leave me alone. And then he'd call me and he'd leave a message, and that was when you could give your friends the password for your phone. And so I would have my friends listen to the message, and they'd be like, you have to call him, and it went back and forth that until May, when he actually met me. He was packed up to move back to Ohio with a stop in Texas to see this woman. And I met him at Amoeba Records.
Oh, okay.
And even then, he was saying, do you still have that apartment? Like, he was still waffling.
Oh, jeez.
And then he finally got in the truck and drove away.
Wow.
And at that point, we had completed, I guess, 15 tracks of instrumentals, and somehow I had completed 6 tracks of vocals because I had already done the Black Hole vocals.
Okay.
No memory of recording those vocals. The only memory I have is I was trying to record a vocal for the song Wichita, and I couldn't get a take, and I just started crying, and that's it. Then I had the breakdown of my life, and that's when I lost 12 years of my life.
Yeah, you're getting mentally beaten up every which way you turn.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And part of that breakdown, you end up losing your voice.
Well, losing my voice in the sense of I was trying to sing that vocal. I sang that song many times. I demoed it on my own. I knew the song. I couldn't get a good vocal. And that's what that shut me down.
Wow.
And I just lost all hope, basically. And I stopped going to the studio, and I had this tiny apartment, and one of my cats, he was very sweet, but he was not very well behaved ever.
Oh no.
And so I'm having this breakdown where I'm just lying in bed, either crying or like reading. I was reading like 2 or 3 Agatha Christie's a day.
Oh wow.
Like, that's all I did was just lay in bed, read, and cry.
Oh my God.
And so he started peeing at the doorway, which this is a door that leads out into the canyon, in the Hollywood Hills.
Okay.
And I had a little kind of terrace area. It was just dirt, but I had a chair out there, and I would sit out there with my computer and read my horoscopes and smoke cigarettes and drink coffee in the morning and drink wine at night. And coyotes would literally like lay down, 5 feet below me.
Oh wow.
So, the cats could not get out, and he did get out one night, but that's another whole story.
Oh no.
Which involves tequila, but
as most good stories or really bad stories do.
Right. Luckily, the coyote didn't get him when he got out, but
Good.
So, you know, this cat was like, he loved me so much, and I never really loved him like I loved all my other cats, and I always felt guilty about it because he lived the longest of all my cats, and he, you know, he was very sick the last like 3 years of his life, and you know, I'm giving him shots every day, and he, you know, the last like month of his life, or maybe 6 months, he would get on my chest in bed, and I'm trying to read, and I'd be like, Joey, you know, I'm trying to read, you know, and he was just trying to be close to me because he knew that he didn't have much time left.
Aww.
But so we're in LA, you know, years before, and I'm having the breakdown, and he's acting out. And one day, I guess I'd gone out to the store or something, and I get in my bed, which was just this platform with a mattress on it.
Okay.
And there was shit on it.
Oh.
And I was like, motherfucker, Joey. And I picked the shit up and I put it in the toilet and flushed it, and I was just gonna just get in bed anyway, and I got in the bed and it was wet.
Oh.
So he had shat and peed in the bed.
Oh my God.
And then I was like, that I can't. And I the next morning I drove him to the vet, and I boarded him there until my sister came and got me.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Wow. How did you get through all this time period? What did you do to get through all that period and recover?
Well, you know, it's I don't know. Howard probably told you that I'm putting out this live recording to benefit mental health.
Yes.
And I had this therapist that retired in September of 2018, and I thought that because I was still depressed that she hadn't done me any good.
Okay.
And then on the 6th of June, D-Day and Eclipse Day, I talked to the woman that I had known ever since I first went into McLean's Hospital in 2007, and I said, you know, I think because when she had retired, I'd said, you know, if something changes for the better in my life, do you want me to let you know, you know?
Yeah.
And so finally, you know, after I eventually, you know, finally, like my last resort was I became an alcoholic, and that getting into AA was like the beginning of my recovery, you know. So you know, things started to really turn for the better. You know, I decided to put this record out. I contact Brett Thorngren, who had mixed it for me maybe 5 or 6 years earlier, because I just thought, you know, it'd be nice to hear what they'd sound like if they were mixed.
Yeah.
And he did such an amazing job, and you know, my friends would listen to it and go, wow, you know, that sounds great. And you know, some of them were like, oh, you should put it out as an EP. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to put out an EP. I'm not going to put it out until I can put out the entire record.
Okay.
And then, and just for some reason in June, I took a friend to lunch. I went to go to a movie. There was a little time I had to wait, so I sat on a bench on Central Park West, and it just popped into my head, I want to put this out.
Oh.
And I texted Brett immediately, and he got back to me immediately, and he was like, oh my God, I just found those recordings 2 weeks ago. Because when he mixed it, he was like, and he was a DJ. He was like a big time DJ.
Oh, okay.
He went by Cosmo, big time, all over Europe, and you know, huge.
Oh, okay.
But he's like a genius. He's a genius engineer, mixing and mastering person.
Which I know more about now.
Right. But when he was mixing it, you know, he'd mix one song and he'd get back to me. He'd be like, oh my God, this is epic, you know, and he just like every song he had that response to. And I was like, that's really nice, you know, and especially for, you know, what I thought was, you know, a hip hop DJ or just whatever he did.
Yeah.
But, you know, he had a real appreciation for actual real music. So I text him. He's like, I just found the recordings 2 weeks ago. I was thinking about you. He's like, I'm all in. Let's do it.
Awesome.
So I had decided to reward myself with a trip to London. And so I went to London. I had bought this new laptop because my old laptop was from 2008 and it was so old that I couldn't upgrade the system.
Oh, jeez.
And I couldn't pay my rent anymore because they required you to pay online. So I was like, oh, fuck it. I'll buy the newest MacBook Pro and I'll just keep it for, you know, 10 years like I do all my computers.
Yeah, I do the same thing.
So then I bring it to London and I'm, you know, Cosmo is like sending me mixes. I'm in this tiny hotel room and I'm listening to these mixes on my laptop and giving him notes, you know, in my little room on my bed, having tea and cookies, biscuits. And, you know, I'd go downstairs at maybe 6 a.m. and to have a cigarette, and he would FaceTime me, and I'd be like, what the fuck are you doing up at this hour, you know? And he'd be like all excited, and, you know, we would talk, and we've become, he's like my work husband. He's like my husband.
That's awesome.
He's got 2 kids, he's got a wife, but as far as I'm concerned, he's my collaborative partner musically at this point.
Oh, that's great.
So, and we, you know, it's sort of a similar kind of, you know, beautiful mind, kind of crazy genius thing going on. But, so yeah, you know, I started, you know, listening to and approving mixes. Oh, and I also briefly was back in touch with my old bass player who had also gone into AA.
Oh, wow.
Because we used to drink together. And she was way worse than me, a lot earlier than me. But, and I called her up and I said, you know, he wants to remix all this stuff, you know, what do you think? And she's like, because he was like, well, the technology is so much more advanced than it was 6 years ago when I did this. And he's like, of course, you have to. So then he remixed it and mastered it. And I'm, you know, I did a lot of it when I was in London.
Okay.
And then I came home and did a lot of it here. We finished it off here. And I got a friend from graduate school, did the artwork for free for me. You know, wow. I bought the $20 InDesign Photoshop package, and I put the package together and bought a bunch of CDs because I hadn't put a CD out since 2001, and I didn't know, you know, I didn't know how many CDs to buy.
Right.
And I had a little record release party. I had like a little one here in the city and then a little one upstate for my friends up there. And one of my friends was like, he saw the boxes of CDs and he's like, what are you going to do with all those CDs? And I said, well, I don't know, probably hold on to them for 10 or 15 years and then take them to the dump.
Oh, man. I still love CDs.
It's turned out, I'm now on my third record, my third radio promoter, and I think I finally found the right fit. And essentially, we're going to re-release the record entirely to college. And this is a guy who broke Janelle Monáe and people like that. I mean, and he just made so much sense, and I the first promoter, another guy on the spectrum, bless his soul, he loved the music, but, he wasn't really, he had a young staff that were, helped me set up my social media.
Yeah.
He also had someone that did publicity. I got a lot of great reviews, in places that nobody had ever heard of.
Oh, gosh.
Except for maybe 3. I think BuzzFeed and maybe Reddit and Medium were the only ones that I'd never heard of any of them, but those were people I knew had heard of them, my family, because when the record came out, I was up at my family cabin in Michigan with my sisters, 2 of my sisters, and I had a little record release party there on August 21st because it was the anniversary of my father's death.
Oh gosh.
So we had a little party there.
Oh.
So I had 3 little tiny record release parties.
So the music on the album is this. It's not re-recorded or anything. It's what you recorded back in 2007 then.
Everything except Black Hole. Black Hole is essentially what's on the Pearl Harbor record, but after Pearl Harbor came out, I decided, and Fred agreed, that you couldn't hear the acoustic well enough. So we re-recorded the acoustic, and then in my very sad winter after I moved upstate after my father died, I had my Pro Tools studio up to date at that point, and I ended up just recording a bunch of harmonies. And so the difference between the Pearl Harbor Black Hole and the Thatched Roof Black Hole is better guitars, better acoustic, a lot more harmonies, remixed and remastered.
Okay. Well, I've been completely obsessed by One Day the Sun Came Up and Every Day You Break My Heart. Those 2 songs are amazing to me. It's funny. I don't know if this may sound a little odd, but they almost sound like they have like a spooky Alice in Chains kind of vibe to me.
You don't see anything I do, and absence doesn't make you fonder. And one more moment is too long for me to stay. Mama, you break my heart every day. Mama, you break my heart every day.
Well, I always write from experience, and again, like life what you're witnessing mirrors what's going on inside you.
Mm-hmm.
And Every Day You Break My Heart was written about my mother, Christmas after my father died. She had stopped drinking, but she was a dry drunk because she never believed that she was an alcoholic, and she never got any help. I went to rehab, and there was a really horrible incident with her, which prompted me to write that song. And it's really weird because I went upstate recently and I pulled out this P.G. Wodehouse book, and I opened the cover, and there were the first notes that I made for Every Day You Break My Heart.
Oh, wow.
And there's some other stuff, but at the very bottom it said, maybe there's 6 or 7 lines. The last line was, "You break my heart every day."
Wow.
So I just found that book like literally weeks ago.
Oh my gosh.
And after my mother died in April.
Right. Oh, jeez.
So that's where that came from, and that I wrote. I finished writing in Jersey City, and I did record that. I had this really great guitarist, Ann Klein, who's from New York, come in, and I was like, I want these choruses to be just fucked up guitar. I wanted it to just be like crazy.
Yeah.
And she did a really good job. But then when I went out to LA and I got Doug Pettibone, you know, he's like on another level.
Oh yeah,
I diss Ann because she's amazing, but you know, Pettibone he rolled up the first day with a truck full of guitars. Like, he has a special truck that has a cover on the back, and it lifts up, and it's completely full of guitars.
Oh my God. Gee.
Completely full. And I think he used every single one.
Oh man.
Everything from the slide to, you know. The other thing that, I know I'm jumping back and forth, but the other thing that happened, and because I was only on 2 meds at that point, and I'd run out of one of them, and it was like $500.
Wow.
And I didn't have my shit together to figure out that I could print out an insurance card. So I stopped taking it, and that I'm sure also contributed to my breakdown. But I was still working with this nurse practitioner from Woodstock over the phone, and she prescribed Prozac.
Okay.
The Prozac made me shake so much that I couldn't play the acoustic guitar.
Oh, jeez.
So I taught Doug every single one of my parts, and he played them verbatim, which is the only reason I don't credit him for playing acoustic guitar on the record. It's because they were all exactly my parts.
Okay.
That I had written, and we did record Wichita together. We played it. We were both in the same room, and we played it together. So when Wichita finally comes out, if it comes out, when it comes out, it's going to have this doubled acoustic with he and I playing.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, I can't wait to hear that.
But one day the sun came up.
One day the sun came up, we were high over the canyon and headed for home. Racing the sunrise, don't look back. You know California's a dream to you now. And somehow I don't sleep. No comfort, no matter how high, on my head or my feet.
The day that I dropped off Pearl Harbor at the manufacturer, I was in LA. I dropped it off on September 10th of 2001.
Yeah.
And I never flew out of JFK, but for some reason I did that time. So I actually had gone underneath the World Trade Center to get to JFK.
Oh, wow.
And so my flight was delayed, and in LA by 3 hours.
Okay.
So what happened was, I'm claiming to be psychic, but basically I I couldn't sleep. I was so, I just sensed something was really wrong, and I couldn't sleep. And, I had some drinks, and, I took I took a Dramamine or whatever, and I just couldn't sleep. And I just was so like disturbed for the whole flight.
Wow.
And then it turned out that the flight that I was on was the very last flight that landed at JFK the morning before the morning that the planes hit.
Oh, wow.
And so we were the last flight to land. We hear about, a plane, I'm out on the curb waiting for a cab to take me to the PATH train in the city.
Yeah.
And somebody says, well, a plane hit the World Trade Center. And I thought, oh, well, maybe some small plane, like, I thought some idiot, drove a small plane into the World Trade Center.
That's exactly what I thought when I heard about it.
And then the airport shut down, and what they did, which was really fucked up, and I never wrote a letter about. I wrote the letter, I never sent it, but all of the hotel reservation booths in JFK Airport,
yeah,
they hiked their prices up by like 300%.
Oh my God, I didn't realize that.
They knew we were trapped.
Oh,
and I ended up getting together with this Irish girl, 2 Irish girls, one from Northern Ireland, one from Southern Ireland. And we got the very last hotel room.
Jeez.
And we literally, we got in a cab to go to the hotel. The cab driver mistakenly drove off airport. The cops stop him. They're like, you can't drive past here. You can't. So we had to get out of the cab and climb the hill to the hotel, like in the sound of music.
Wow.
And that's when I got, and then it took like 2 hours to check in, and then I went to the bar and I saw the footage.
Oh, jeez.
And then I started drinking gin.
Wow.
And, then the Red Cross came in, and they had beds set up everywhere, and we literally had the last room. So we actually had real beds that were in a room instead of the other people that had to sleep on the cots.
Yeah.
And then the next day, they brought a bus. They decided that they were going to bus us to the subway. And these 2 Irish girls didn't have anywhere to go because there were nobody flew for, I don't know how long it was, months.
Yeah.
At least. So, well, it was a while.
Yeah.
So I brought them home with me. I had this house in Jersey City, and they stayed with me.
Oh, wow.
For a week or two, waiting for the airports to open up so they could go home.
Oh my gosh.
And we would walk down to the waterfront and just watch it burn. And I got this phrase popped into my head: smoke, fire, and dust. Because, it was people, it was, the dust was people.
Yeah.
Soylent Green, it was like, and we here in New York, and we were in Jersey City, so we're like right across from where the World Trade Center was.
Yeah.
And, let's not forget the fact that if my plane hadn't been 3 hours late, I would have been underneath this World Trade Center when the plane hit. So that's another part of it.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, smoke, fire, and dust, and taking the experience I had on the plane, and when I did my first little record release party in Michigan before I had any videos, or no, maybe I did have a video. I don't remember. Because I always thought, the one thing wrong with this song is I'm saying racing the sunrise, California's a dream to you now, because, I wasn't racing the sunrise. I was heading toward the sun. Well, I was heading east. So, that was not my experience, that I was racing the sunrise. And when I was in Michigan, I happened to look up the timeline of 9/11 for like the exact times of when everything happened.
Yeah.
And that's when I realized that I know at least 2 of the planes were headed to California.
Oh,
and they
wow.
were racing the sunrise.
Wow.
California was a dream to them because they didn't live.
Oh my gosh.
So that didn't even occur to me until August 21st of last year, the day the record came out.
Oh my gosh.
I always thought, well, there's something this is the one thing wrong with this song, but it wasn't.
Turns out
right?
it wasn't. Yeah. Oh my. So then you actually you're releasing a live show from 2005 also that I want to know a little bit more about, because you said that you just kind of found it.
Well, I went upstate and I was going through drawers looking for stuff, and I found my mini disc recorder and a little box of mini discs.
Okay.
And I brought it back to the city with me. I thought, maybe I'll get up the nerve to listen to these. And it took me a while because I always assumed that I sounded like shit. And the first one I listened to was my last 2 gigs before my breakdown. And the first one was at this coffee shop in Brooklyn, which is the one that I'm releasing.
Okay.
And then the second one, oddly enough, I was on this compilation record called Females on Fire that was out of LA.
Okay.
And so I flew out there to play the gig, and I got Jason, and Jason got some other great people to play the gig, and they let me have 6 songs. Everybody else had 2, but I got 6 because New York.
Okay.
So first I listened. The first gig on the mini disc is the Vox Pop gig, the coffee shop gig.
Okay.
Where there's a lot of banter. You can hear, it's a mini disc recording, so the quality, there's only so much you can do.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of banter. There's, you hear the audience and me talking back and forth. There's a real personality to it.
Oh yeah.
And the performances are actually really nice. And then there's the gig at the Mint in LA, which was great, but the crowd noise was so loud that it was louder than us.
Oh, wow.
2, my friends at the time that were recording it at their table were talking through the whole thing.
Oh, jeez.
My friend's like, oh, this song Monsters, this is my favorite song, every day your bed's in a different place, but the monster always finds you, and it's like, I'm listening to it, I'm like, shut the fuck up. And then the weirdest thing about it was the last song was Venus Smile.
Right, okay.
And we get through almost the entire song, and right before the last verse, the disc cuts off.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
Oh. Man.
I mean, so that was also incredibly symbolic.
Yeah. You're offering this as a $2 download, and the proceeds are going to 2 different organizations?
Yes.
Can you tell me a little bit about what these organizations do?
Well, the first one that I actually posted long before I even listened to this gig. Well, I don't know if I'd listened to the gig yet or not, but certainly before I decided to put it out. I watch most of my news I get from Stephen Colbert, Trevor Noah, Seth Meyers, Jimmy Kimmel.
Okay.
So one of them, it may have been Trevor Noah, who I adore, had Taraji P. Henson on there, and she's talking about, and it's after the pandemic, obviously, they're doing it from home.
Yeah.
And she's talking about, this foundation she started in honor of her father, who had mental illness.
Okay.
And about how it was so much harder for people in the black and brown communities to get mental health care, and that the stigma was so much greater for them.
Right, yeah.
So I was like, oh my God, so I immediately donated to them, and then I put it up on my website, on my Facebook page, and all my social media.
Okay.
And then, I don't know how much longer later, Glenn Close was on one of the shows, and she had started a mental health initiative because her brother was mentally ill. And that actually had started long before Taraji's. And it was the same thing. It was, helping people get care and helping to erase the stigma of seeking care.
Okay.
So I thought, these two are perfect. The irony is that, I had this belief that therapy hadn't helped me, and now I'm circling back.
Okay.
I found out that my therapist had died. And my friend comes over, because I only had one person that came over. It's my best friend in the city, and she lives half a block away, and she takes care of my cats when I go away.
Okay.
Fiona loves her more than she loves me. But she came over, and I started telling her, and I just started crying, and I just realized, oh my God, the only thing she could have done for me at that point, during that period of time, was keep me alive.
Wow.
And let me live independently from my, essentially destructive family.
Yeah. Wow.
And she would, it's going to be on the website, but, I was afraid to open an email. I would forward it to her.
Oh,
she
wow.
I'd get a new lease. I'd be afraid to open it. I would bring it into her office, and she would read it for me, and she would break it down, and she would help me figure out how to deal with it. She helped me get through day-to-day life. She never pushed me to do music, which was not the case with other people.
Okay.
Because she knew how much pain and fear I had around that. And my family was pressuring me to sell my house upstate. And I just somehow felt like I just needed to hang on to it. I just, I didn't know if I was ever going to get better, but I just didn't want to sell it because it was like, it was the only place that was really mine,
Okay.
And, I would go and see her, and I had been prescribed these pills that, that if you took enough of them, they would kill you. Okay. And I had my coffee table. And every time I would go in to see her or my psychiatrist, the guy who prescribes my meds, they would say, "Are the pills still on your coffee table?" And I would say, "Yes, they are." Wow. And Robin totally understood that it was like, that's my out. Like, if I need it, it's there.
Oh my gosh.
And, I was at the point, and I haven't talked about this yet, and you're going to have a lot of editing to do, but I was at the point where the only way that I could be alive was to be unconscious. So I would wake up in the morning, and I would have a vodka drink, and I would take like 5 or 6 Klonopin, and I would go back to sleep, and I would basically just sleep all day.
Oh, wow.
I couldn't read. I couldn't read a book. I really couldn't watch TV. The only thing I could read was trash magazines, which was a habit that I started when my father died, and I didn't drink at all really then. And I started reading them then because it was the only thing that I could concentrate on.
Okay.
We were sitting around for a week waiting for his funeral.
Yeah. Oh gosh.
So, I got really, so one day I guess it was a Friday, and I had talked to her on the phone, because if I called her up, if I was having a crisis, the minute she got out of a session, she would call me immediately.
Oh, wow.
And like a lot of times I'd be suicidal, and she'd be like, "Okay, take a Klonopin, that's what they're for."
Right.
And it would help. But then one Friday I was really bad, and she said, "I'm going to call you tomorrow." And I did the same thing that I had been doing for a long time, which was I woke up, I had a vodka drink, and I took maybe 5 or 6 Klonopin.
Okay.
And so she called me, and I didn't wake up. And she called me, I guess, 2 more times. And then she called 911.
Oh, wow.
And so I get this this loud knocking on my door. It wakes me up, and I go to the door, and I'm thinking, in retrospect, I probably wasn't completely lucid. I felt like I was.
Yeah.
But, it's 2 cops, and they're like, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I was just taking a nap, and they're like, "You're coming with us." And they put me on a 5150, I think it's called.
Yeah.
Shoved me in this room with this girl who was insane. Like, she didn't sleep all night. I didn't sleep all night.
Oh,
she was all night screaming. Luckily, the second night I got my own room. And for some reason I had 2 volumes of the complete Sherlock Holmes, and that's all I had to do. I was reading that while I was in the hospital, and the food was just so bad. Like, the only thing I could eat was milk and
oh my gosh.
Orange juice.
Wow.
Like, it was terrible. And it was the year that Madonna did the Super Bowl, because I remember going into the TV room and watching her.
Oh, geez.
Because all the nut jobs, were all in the TV room watching the Super Bowl, and I didn't care about the Super Bowl, but I was curious to see Madonna.
Okay.
That's the only way I know when that was.
Oh my God.
So it was in February, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh,
but
wow.
yeah, I was angry with her for years about that. And she always said, she said, the only thing I would have done differently is I would have come and visited you.
Oh, okay. Wow.
But, looking back, and I had already decided to sell this for this purpose because, even though I felt like therapy hadn't helped me, I know that it helped some people, and I didn't, with this pandemic, I didn't want, it was very clear that people were going to be having trouble.
Exactly.
And, so after I already decided to sell it, then I found out about her being dead for 2 years, and I realized everything that she had done for me, which was she kept me alive.
That's amazing. That's a hell of a story. I've never heard anything like that.
And, I may be repeating myself, but I just, when everything started to change for the better, and I really wanted to tell her, and I kept trying to contact her, and I didn't hear anything back, and I just thought, that's weird.
Yeah.
And then finally I asked, my woman from McLean's, and she said, yes, she died 2 years ago.
Oh my gosh.
Because I had pretty much assumed that to be the case, but I didn't know.
Yeah. And so there's
no way she wouldn't have called me back. And she must have died almost immediately after she retired. And apparently she had cancer for over a year before that, and she was going to retire the year before, and she had some kind of treatment, and it worked for a while, so she put off her retirement for an entire year.
Oh wow. And so
have to be alive for another year, I'll tell you one more thing about the suicidal thing.
Yeah.
I went to go see a movie, I don't know if you've heard of it, called Me Before You.
No, I'm not familiar with that one.
It's Emilia Clarke and Sam Claflin, I think.
Okay.
And he plays a guy that was just a vital, gorgeous, athletic, successful man who has, I think through some kind of water sport accident, become a quadriplegic.
Oh, okay.
Emilia Clarke goes in to be his companion. She takes a job as his companion.
Okay.
And, he's very angry, and he's very shut off, and she's really wacky and fun, and, he just softens up eventually, and they fall in love, and she gets him to go out, and she takes him out on a boat, and then she finds out that he has this plan, that in 6 months he's going to this place in Switzerland where they give you assisted suicide.
Oh wow.
And she finds out about it, and she tries to say, she's like, no, you can't do it now. We can have such a great life together. We're in love, and, you can't do it. And in the end, he does it.
Oh, wow.
Because he says, he says, I can't live life this way. This is not the way I was meant to live life. And I left that movie, and I was like, I am paralyzed. I've been paralyzed for, I don't know how many years it was at that point. I have no life. I have no prospects. I have no passion. I have no love. And I wrote the people in Switzerland. I researched it, and I wrote them. And I said, I am paralyzed. I've been this way for a long time, and, can you help me?
Wow.
And they wrote me back and they said, the only way we would do it for someone for psychological reasons is if your psychiatrist and your therapist sign off on it.
Oh, wow.
Was not going to happen.
No. Well,
so then I gave up. And then, the funny part of that is that they send me newsletters to this day. And I met this guy in AA that we got close, and he's a comedian, and I was telling him about that, and I was like, yeah, they send me letters, and so I came home and I went through my email and I found one of them, and I forwarded it. I had told my sister too. I forwarded it to both of them, and the heading was, if you're not dead yet, please subscribe and send money.
oh my God.
And they still send them to me.
Oh my gosh.
You wouldn't let me, you wouldn't help me die, and you want my money?
Oh my God.
Isn't that crazy?
Maybe that's why they wouldn't help you.
Well, everything happens for a reason, right?
Exactly. And so you're offering this live show. The money is going to Bring Change to Mind and the Boris Lawrence Henson Foundation, and you also offering your Thatch Roof Glass House album at a substantially reduced price because of so many people being affected by the COVID-19 virus.
I did that at the very beginning of the pandemic.
I think that's amazing.
Well, I mean, I figured, I want the music out there. If I sell the record for 50 cents, it's still going to count as a sale. And, if I sell a track for 10 cents, it's going to count as a sale. And it's essentially anybody can afford that. And if they want it, they can buy it. And
the music is amazing. It's absolutely beautiful. I love it. I've been listening to it for days now since we got this whole thing set up. I've been going back and doing my research and listening to it. So it's worth way more than you're charging. So,
well, somebody actually bought it today from the UK for $5.
Hey.
And I wrote him back, because nobody's really bought it.
Really?
And I wrote that because everybody's just streaming, and it's like my website is not really that well known. My social media, my Facebook is pretty good.
Yeah.
For somebody that's essentially unknown. My Instagram, it's inching toward 1,000. Twitter, I have 26 followers, so that's where I am. That's where I let loose with my political beliefs because there's nobody paying any attention, So. But so the guy bought today. I woke up this morning because I did change it once the reopening started about a week ago to you can pay what you want if you want to pay more, you can.
Oh, okay.
And a guy from the UK bought it for $5. So I wrote him and I sent him a file with all the lyrics in it. And I said, thank you for buying it, and thank you for buying it for more than you had to.
Yeah.
Here's the lyrics.
That's awesome. So if anybody else wants to do that, where can they find the album and the live show?
The live show is only going to be on my website because that's the only way I can control where the money goes.
Okay.
So it's not gonna count as any kind of sales for me.
Right.
But I'm all right with that. I don't care. People, you can buy the record on iTunes. You can buy it on Bandcamp. You can buy it on CD Baby. You can buy it anywhere.
Okay.
Online. But only on. Well, I think I said it. I think on Bandcamp I said it as low as they'd let me set the price.
Okay.
But I haven't made any sales from there, and I am getting streams, and it's interesting because people are streaming all my records and all the tracks off all my records. So that's kind of cool because, especially because I haven't been promoting Pearl Harbor at all because I'm going to re-release it.
Right.
And people are like listening to all the tracks. So that's very encouraging to me.
That's wonderful. What's the website where they can buy the live show?
It's just alphacat.band.
All right, perfect. And what's your social media where people can follow you and get information about the remastered Pearl Harbor and everything else that you're up to?
Everything is Alphacat Band.
I've kept you for 2 hours now, and I want to thank you so much for the amazing stories and the wonderful conversation. It's really been wonderful getting to know you today through the emails, through the show, and I definitely want to stay in touch and
talk about Richard Lloyd.
Yeah. Maybe we could get him on. I can get both of you guys on at the same time.
Oh my God, no, you can't do that. No. That's something we'll talk about, not on the air.
You got it. Thank you so much for spending so much time with me. It's been really a pleasure speaking with you and getting to know you today. I've really enjoyed it.
I know, it was fun. The emailing was fun.
It was. Keep it up.
Yeah, definitely. I've enjoyed it immensely.
Thank you.
And I really appreciate, your research and your interest and your funny emails today that were laugh. So.
Oh, I'm glad.
And I didn't even get to tell you my Not a Surf story.
Oh my gosh. Okay, well you can tell me now.
Okay, well, after we finished recording Pearl Harbor, and we got best drummer I'd ever played with at that point, Matt, I can't remember his last name. He was Jeff Buckley's drummer.
Oh, I know who you're talking about. Crap. God, I'm so bad.
Played on Pearl Harbor and there were 3 drummers on it. So I think Matt played on 3 songs, but it was the most fun I've ever had playing with a drummer in my life until I met Jason.
Oh, cool.
It just made it so easy to lock in with him.
Matt Johnson.
Matt Johnson, yeah. Well, so after Pearl Harbor was recorded, we needed a drummer, and Not a Surf had been broken up they were broken up at that point, and somehow I got in touch, or their drummer, and I looked up his name because it's been years. I've lost his name.
Oh. Well.
Anyway, you can look it up.
Yeah.
He came and met Fred and I in the Village for coffee, and he gave me this demo that Not a Surf had recorded.
Okay.
That demo was the most gorgeous thing I had ever heard in my life.
Oh, wow.
And I was obsessed with it. I loved it so much. And it got ruined.
Oh.
And it's on a hard drive that's 25 years old somewhere, which, but in particular, my favorite song on there, which was just stunning, unbelievable song, Inside of Love.
Okay.
Do you know that song?
I'd have to hear it again. I used to know some Not a Surf, but I'd have to listen to it again.
Well, this is the end of the story. Not a Surf got back together. They got back on a major label. The major label made them re-record Inside of Love, and they fucking ruined it.
Oh.
The song is not what it was. It's just, I mean, it's a great song, but the thing that entire demo was just hauntingly beautiful. And I don't know if any of them have a copy of it. In fact, I should try to see if I can get in touch with somebody, because I was so upset when I heard that release, what they did to that song, and that's when I decided that I would never ever be on a major label.
That's amazing. Oh gosh, I hate hearing that, because a lot of times you'll hear that the demos were good, but and I'll be honest, that's why I love getting the deluxe editions of re-releases, because I like hearing the demo versions of songs, and sometimes they are better than the release version. They're a little more stripped down, or something's a little different that makes it better to me.
It was Ira.
Okay.
I've got to try to get in touch with him and see if he has a copy of that demo. I must own that.
Oh man,
I have that in my possession. It's stunningly, hauntingly beautiful. It's just the most gorgeous thing I think I've ever heard.
Oh gosh, now you're making me want to hear it.
The songwriting, I have this friend. I took this friend of mine, the one who did the artwork for Thatched Roof. I took him to a Nada Surf gig to show him how great they were.
Yeah.
And I went up to Matthew, and I didn't know Matthew. I went up to him afterward, and I said, I'm completely in love with your songwriting. And my friend Sean's like, and with you. Okay. And I'm like, oh, you stupid asshole. Why did you say that?
Oh, God.
I couldn't believe he said that. And then Matthew was like, see you later.
Yeah. I got to go over there.
It was so mortifying.
Oh my gosh! Well, you should check him up. I'm sure he's got an Instagram page. An Instagram account. You could probably find him on there and message him.
Yeah, I will.
Well, thank you so much again for everything. Let's definitely stay in touch and email back and forth, and let me know some more Richard Lloyd stories. That guy fascinates me.
Yeah, those are going to be off the record.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a phone conversation.
You got it. All right.
So, okay.
Well, thank you so much again.
Thank you too. You were just very sweet, and I feel really lucky that the people that are responding are, with one exception, one woman interviewed me, and it was like talking to a rock. But
oh gosh,
it was
fun.
So cool.
Yeah.
Aside from that, it's like I feel like the people that are, that I'm connecting with are people that I want to have as friends. So, I feel that way.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Now, so yeah.
Well, thank you. I feel the same way.
Black sheep, too deep, can't sleep. Let go, slow ride, low tide couldn't hurt a fly.